Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back. This is really exciting. So I have a pretty special guest with me today. So I'm hoping you stick around to this and tune in. I'm going to be interviewing Peya Robbins, who's been my virtual assistant since February of 2020, when I had a very different business plan in mind and I needed a little extra help. And she has had a front row seat in the roller coaster of my business ever since. And I really can't imagine this business without her. And so I was thrilled to give a chance for her to be seen and heard by a lot of other people by having her come and be a guest in the show. So without any further delay, let me formally introduce this week's guest. Today's guest supports visionary entrepreneurs looking to make the world better than they found it. She's a first-generation American and firstborn daughter who has been solving problems her entire life. She's a fixer and can fill many different roles in your business and creates a safe space for her clients to be seen and heard as they are. She founded Pey Pey the VA, a virtual assistant company which provides transition support and visibility strategies for those ready to break generational cycles, build wealth, and live the life they've always wanted, but didn't know was an option. She's also been my virtual assistant since February 2020 and is at a front row seat in the roller coaster of my business over the last 3 years. I can't imagine my business without her. Please join me in welcoming Peya Robbins. Hey,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank you so much for peer pressuring me to do this with you. Fun, super
Thanks for
fun.
joining us from Vancouver, Washington. You have been probably the most steadfast listener of my show in the last 3 years because I
Yeah.
know you do the show notes and listen every single week. And it's about time that we put you in the hot seat as a guest. So, as you know, this show is about building strong networks and talking about how do we build these connections in the context of leadership. So, tell me, how do you define leadership, and when did you realize you had the skills to lead?
So not that I've replayed about 150 episodes that I've heard or worked on show notes in my head to ensure that I wasn't copying my definition, but no one has ever said my definition, and I don't think I've ever vocalized it to you. So to me, my experience is that leadership is creating through chaos. The way you walk into a day, the way you step into a day, you never know. You could wake up and hype yourself up all morning. I do that. But the moment I step into my day, if something is going wrong or not as expected, it's what you create in that moment that determines how good of a leader you are.
I appreciate
And
that. I really do
oh,
appreciate that. I'm thinking about when I was hiring for event assistant roles years ago, and or hiring even like interns. I always looked for people who had some experience on the resume that I thought would be helpful. And two of the places that I found some of the best support were people who had been like a host or hostess at a restaurant, like a very high end, busy restaurant, or one of them was a choreographer. And that's about taking chaos and creating something magical and orderly out of it and knowing how to work in that chaos. And I think those are
right.
great leadership qualities that I looked for. Transferable skills, how do you, it's all kind of a blur, and then you like make it make sense and make it make sense to other people too,
Right.
as well.
It has to be internal and external. It can't just make sense in your head. You have to be able to take that and communicate it to someone else, or else you're not leading anyone but yourself.
I'm always
And
surprised when I get a chance to hear a definition that's different after all these years.
and I mean, you said it in my intro. I'm a firstborn daughter. I've been leading people since I was 3 years old, and my little sister was born. So that is it's a life skill, a little T trauma, depending on who you talk to. But it's how children of immigrants. It's how we're raised. We take care, and when you're a girl and you come into this world, it doesn't matter where you fall. If you're the firstborn daughter, you're in charge of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, were there language pieces to this as well? Because I was
Oh,
just watching a movie that made me think of this, where it's like this kid was really young, was really having to do a lot of the trend. In that case, it was the movie Coda. The parents are deaf, and the child is not is hearing. But like how did you have to sort of play a different role and have that responsibility at a young age?
It surprises a lot of people because of how I speak, but English is not my first language. I think I was speaking English properly in about the second half of first grade, maybe second grade. I went to a bilingual kindergarten and a bilingual pre-K and a bilingual first grade. And it was really hard, and I didn't understand why verbs were the way they were in English. And I still remember having that conversation with my mom, and it was something she couldn't help me with because she didn't learn English. Like, she knew enough, as you say, enough to be dangerous, but she didn't know how to really go out there and like negotiate something. So at 7 years old, I was filling out social security documents for people in my family. I was translating passport documents and reading something that didn't quite make sense to me, making it make sense, and then again grabbing that chaos and kind of translating it to my grandmother or my mother or my dad, to make it make sense to them so that I could then ask for documents that I didn't know existed, because at 7, you don't know what a resident alien card is or what a green card number is or citizenship tests or any of that. You're just like reading things and then having to explain it to someone else to get that information for you.
Yeah, that's a big responsibility at a young age. And then, of course, being the oldest also meant that you were probably helping a lot with your siblings. How many siblings do you have?
So officially, I am the oldest of 6.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of family there to herd,
Right. And
to
then
cat herd.
going to school, like if there was a homework assignment, I was not allowed, of course, as the firstborn, I was not allowed to bring bad grades or have questions about schoolwork. I'm the smart one, right? The legacy of my family rides on my shoulders.
Mm.
So then if my sister needed help with school, my mom couldn't help her. My mom was busy trying to, make money to buy food and, make sure everybody had an equal amount of drinks and was able to do things. And, you ate and you drank juice and then you went to bed or whatever. So I had to help my sister. And then when my brother came along way later, my mom was way at work and getting promoted in her job and doing different things. And she worked 3 different jobs. So it was like, when would she have raised this little tiny human and taught him how to pronounce his vowels, and that vowels have 2 sounds, a long and a short sound? Like, when would she have done that?
You're making me laugh only because I'm in that moment where I'm still helping my kids who are like pre-K and first grade, figuring out how to like sound things out as they're learning how to read and write and all that stuff. And as a parent who is both of us work from home, but it still feels like we're not around enough. Like,
Yeah.
kids require a lot of attention to help them succeed in life. So you being the older daughter who was willing and able, or kind of voluntold and able to step
Willing.
up. Where does it start showing up later? Like, when you're 12, 13, did you have a particular sense of what you wanted to be in the world? Were you running for school, positions like student council? Did you organize your friends in the playground? Like what kind of kid were you, not just in your home life, but at school?
So in school, I was the very typical overachiever. I was in everything. I played sports. I joined every club that would have me, and not just join as like that member in the back. If you look at my high school yearbook, my junior and senior year, especially my senior year, I am quite literally on 80% of those pages. There, I'm in president of French club, secretary of Spanish club. I'm in on the international night committee, which is like a show of different. Everybody comes in and like the Greek girls do the Zorba and the Spanish girls dance bachata on stage, which I did my whole time at high school. And I was on the yearbook committee and I was on newspaper and I was helping coordinate different things. I was everywhere. Everywhere you looked, I was there. And it wasn't pressure from, I don't think my parents pressured me to do that. I felt that internal drive because for me, that was my way out. That was my ticket out. I had and still have huge dreams about what I want to be when I grow up. And it has gone through stages depending on what I was doing at the time. So when I was like 8 or 9 or 10, I wanted to be an immigration lawyer. I wanted to make it easier for people from the Dominican Republic to come to this country and navigate what I believe to be the scam of the immigration system in the United States. It doesn't need to be that difficult. You just need to know who they are and make sure they're working. Like that was what 8-year-old Peya thought. And it was like, why do they need to do all these things? I don't even know who the 13th president is. Why does my mom need to know this? Is he coming back? Is there a reason? Like none of that stuff made sense. Which then it was like, fine, because I make jokes because it's a coping skill. And my mom just, kind of rolled with the punches. But as I got older, I just realized like there were so many things that I had to do for her that, yes, I figured out how to do, but also were way outside of my realm of expertise at 8, as most things are. I look at Lorelai now and I'm just like, wow, she will never have to do this for me. She'll only know about this if I tell her or when I tell her. And then as I moved up, I didn't really play with kids in my playground, like in my neighborhood. I did. And I was one of the older ones. So by default, if I wanted to play kickball and not dodgeball, we were playing kickball or I was taking the ball and going home and doing something else. So it wasn't more of a organizing. It was like, hey, this is what we're doing. Oh, you don't want to? I guess we'll see you tomorrow. Fine, bye. And that was that. And in school, it was just my mom set for me as the oldest, I had very strict metrics to meet. And it was, if I brought home anything less than an 85, that's failing to my mother. And then when my sister came along, it was like, oh, she got a 70, it's fine. It was like the air and the spare vibes where that firstborn needs to figure it out. You're the one paving the way. And then these guys, like they're scrubs. They're going to come along for the ride, but they don't really have to do everything that you're doing.
It's a lot of pressure.
Pressure. If I say pressure to my mom now, she'd be like, what do you mean? You had the best childhood. Yes, I did. But and it was a lot for me. It was
it's not really but, it's end.
Right.
I'm also trying to picture the Peya that I've known the last 3 years, who only in the last year or so has really started to show up in a more visible way. It started with red lipstick about a year or so ago, right? Like
yes.
You doing a video challenge and trying to put yourself out there more on video and just being present and connecting. And I know peopling is not your favorite thing to do, but here you're describing yourself as a person who was not just a member of all these groups, but taking leadership roles. What explains your earlier desire to take leadership roles in all of these different after school activities?
I don't want to be seen. I never want to be the person that's perceived. But I know that I'm the mastermind behind a lot of things. And I don't know how to reconcile that. I don't know how to connect one to the other. But in doing all of these things and showing up in all of these places, when I show up, it never feels hard. I show up exactly how I'm showing up right now, exactly how I show up in our meetings is who I am in real life. If you see me in Target, it's this. A bumbling, sometimes mess of like excitement and information and hype all of the time. But I was never taught, I don't know how to say this and not, I was never taught to be the center of attention. First of all, I couldn't be the center of attention because I was a brown girl who was overweight, who was sick, who out of anxiety and different cocktail of medications that she needed to take as a kid has like dark marks all over her face and suffers with hyperpigmentation, which translated in a social aspect to people making fun of me and being bullied. I was just bigger than all the boys. So like you could bully me from over there because if you were in front of me, it would be a problem. And then I was never scared of standing up for myself or standing up for the little guy in school. And people would teachers would say things like, I'll call your mom. And I'm like, okay, we'll call her because she doesn't speak English. So I'll be the one, she's going to pick up the phone and then she's going to say, Pellita, come over here. And I'm going to translate and I'm going to just be like, yeah, I just got 100 on the test. Oh, why is my shirt ripped? I don't know. I must have been playing. I'm never going to be like, oh, yeah, she wants you to go to school and sign a paper because I got into a fight. I just never.
You're playing the game. Like you knew how to play the the
I knew
rules. You're making the rules.
exactly. Right. And I never got in trouble. I was a good kid. I was a straight A student who played sports and was member of a ton of clubs. I just didn't get in trouble. But
Yeah.
I absolutely knew what I was thrust into adult situations where I knew adult situations in the matter of like paperwork wise and doing things
Yeah.
for my parents that they couldn't, for my mom that she couldn't do for herself, or having to do that. So I was very wise to the world that I was growing up in. And then I knew it set for me very young that I knew what I didn't want. I didn't know what I wanted. As I got older, I had no idea where this world would take me. Did I know that I was going to move 20 times in 10 years at 13? No, I didn't know that. But I've always been open to the journey, and I don't know, just kind of go where the world
Yeah.
takes me.
I definitely want to explore more of that, but I just want to say that this distinction you're making between, as you said, being perceived, being visible, being seen, and being the mastermind behind the scenes, knowing how to get things done, which you clearly are, and you still are that today, the person who knows how to get things done. But I know that things have sort of changed a little bit around how you're being. I mean, you're here, so clearly some of that has changed. I'm going to be curious to ask you more about that in a minute. When you got done with high school, and here you are, the oldest of 6 kids. So that's a big family, no matter where you live. So was there a plan for you to continue with your education? Were you going into the workforce? Like, what were those first few years after high school like?
There was no plan. I remember telling my parents that not only was I going to go to university, but the exact school that I was going to, there was a lot of mini and not so many panic attacks. And it was the same. I was already well versed in that conversation because it was the same conversation I had to have with my parents when I went from 8th grade to high school. Because I went to a Catholic school for elementary and middle school, which is all one school, pre-K to 8. And then I said I wanted to go to Mount St. Ursula. It was an all-girls school in the Bronx, highly rated. I had participated in a decathlon at that school, and I met a bunch of the women that went there. And I said, this is where I need to be. There's a lot of brown girls here. There's a lot of girls from Marble Hill and from Washington Heights that go to this school, and this is where I want to be. But the tuition was like $500 back then, right? 94, $500 a month. And my mom laughed in my face. She's like, absolutely not. We're not doing that. Who's going to get the money for that? So I advocated. I called all of my rich uncles or whatever. And I said, hey, I really want to go to the school, and I'm super smart, and I know that I can get far, and I need you to help me pay for this. And my uncles were like, tell me where to send the check. Because it was a no questions, like, how dare you even ask me? Just send me an address. Mm-hmm. And when I decided that I wanted to go to Marymount, I had no plan. I really had no business going to university. But I wanted to go because that's what was drilled in me. You need to go to school. You need to be smart. You need to have a good career. You need to find a good man, whatever that means. I didn't know what that meant until I was 31. You need to find a good man, and you need to have 1,000 babies. And that was the life plan. If you asked me at 7 or at 17, that was the plan. And I did not like it, and I did not agree with it. And I knew that in order to deviate, I needed to have an alternate. There needed to be something else. I couldn't just say, hey, I'm not going to do these things.
Yeah.
It would be unacceptable.
So how do you find your way into college, into university?
I got a scholarship because I'm smart.
Because you were doing so many things.
Yes. Yeah. It's very easy to write multiple versions of a college acceptance, like a college entrance essay, when you have so many things that you could talk about. I could talk about my grades, write a whole dissertation on how, even though I'm raising all these tiny people in my house, I still managed to get good grades and be active participants in multiple clubs and sports. Or I could just write about my extracurriculars and use the grades as like an aside. So became very simple, and I got grants and student loans, and I made my way, and then got there and was like, oh wow, this is not for me. This
Mm.
is not for me. I mean, I did end up graduating from a different school after, but it was just not for me. And honestly, not using any of those skills because I couldn't find a job in the things that I went to school for, and then ended up doing my own thing anyway.
It's
But people don't tell
interesting.
you that.
It must be hard after you you put so much effort and energy into finally getting to, let's say, university, to then get there and realize it's not for you, and to make the decision to then not do it. I mean, that takes a lot of self-awareness to not just be like, well, this is the lot that I've done. Like I got here, now I have to follow through. Like that decision making at a young age, particularly at a young age, I think it's hard to do. I think a lot of people have trouble with that. But it sounds like you got there and suddenly was, wait, this isn't quite right. How did you make that decision, and what were your next steps? Like how did you come up with the next plan? As you said, you can't just say, I'm not doing this. You have to say, I am doing this instead.
Right. Well, to speak to something you said, it wasn't easy. I did spend 3 semesters, almost 4 semesters. I think I did 2 years
Mm.
at school, knowing that I hated it. And I dislike using that word, but for that experience, there's no other way to describe it. Like I knew it wasn't a good fit, but I had all this pressure. I could hear the weight of my ancestors telling me, this is your way out. And there was no one else did it differently. The different example that I had was immigrating to another country where it was extremely difficult, and then starting from less than scratch.
Right.
And once I guess hyped myself up to the point of this is not working and I refuse to be a participant in this anymore, I packed up my dorm room. I told my friends, oh, hey, yeah, I'm going home for the holidays. I'll be back. I'll see you when we get back. And I never went back.
Oh, wow.
And I stayed in touch with some of the women I went to university with, because of course I picked an all-girl university to go to. And I went home, and I had not told anyone that I was not going back to school. I had withdrawn completely. I sold all my books. And I think late summer, my mom was like, oh, when do we need to take you back? And I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And there was a lot of arguing in Spanish and a lot of very emotional, I can't believe that you've wasted your life. I'm 20, 19, wasted my life at 20. Looking at my life now, at that age, I was maybe just being born. If I ran past Peya at 20 on the street, I wouldn't even recognize her.
So where'd you go next?
I stayed home. I got a job because nobody's going to support me. So as a school dropout, the disappointment of Dominicans everywhere, I got a job, and I excelled at my job. And I've excelled at every job I've ever had, where within 6 months, the running joke is that I get promoted regardless of where I am. I have lots of retail under my belt, which is how I learned to work with people and do all of the peopling. It's the only type of peopling that I enjoy is in a retail environment. But I, paid my own way. I got an apartment. I worked. I partied, and I played video games, and that's how I live my life. And I would design business cards for people on the side because I learned the skills. Thank you, FedEx office, for teaching me that. How to design business cards and how to be mindful about where your logo goes as opposed to your email address.
And is that the beginning, the business card design? Is that the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey?
It is. I would design business cards for people on the side, and I would charge $25 a pop because I knew that if I wanted to go party at Iguanas on 54th Street and Broadway with my friends from work, that I needed to sell 7 business card sets. And then I'm like, oh, and if you bring them, and it was an unofficial joint venture between me and FedEx, because I would design them. And then I'd be like, oh, if you bring them by the store, this is my work schedule. And then I can just you can place your order there for the printing. So I made my $25, and then FedEx would make Kinko's would make their money for the printing.
That's slick. Yeah. What year is that you started doing business cards? Just so we have some context.
2005, maybe
Uh-huh.
2006.
Yeah, people
This
didn't
is
really know how to do that on their own.
They did not.
No.
Photoshop, Illustrator, those were words that unless you worked in the
Right.
design district of that area, like in that area, you didn't know that.
Right. Yeah. People couldn't. I actually, my first business card, my cousin ordered for me when I was in high school. So I think in 1991, I had a business card selling bagels. I was selling bagel sandwiches at high school. But then in 1997, 98, I was trying to find an internship for my master's in social work, I guess 98. And I made with a dot matrix printer business card, and I printed it on construction paper. That's what I had. And I cut it out with a scissor. This is what I
Nice.
had. And it looked as janky as you're picturing. And it landed me a statewide coordinator role as an
See?
intern. So it worked.
See? And
It
that's all
served
that
its
matters, right?
purpose. It served its purpose. But to fast forward to 2005 and be able to have somebody design something for me would be a pretty big deal. Particularly if I knew them and I could have a conversation with them. I mean, like that touch of personalization is pretty hard to do. So it's a very clever thing. How did that grow? I mean, now you offer quite a range of services. 2005 to here we are in 2023. When did the business sort of like Dory Clark once said to me, you'll know it's time to quit your job when it gets in the way of your business. So at what point did the business become more of a thing?
I started with business cards, then somebody who I had designed business cards for, she was a architect. She worked in a design house in downtown Manhattan, and she was doing a 80th birthday party for her mother, and she just random chit chat conversation, and she's saying how she's so stressed out and she wants to do this party and it's taking up so much of her time and her job and blah blah blah. And I said, okay, well, what do you need help with? Like, you're complaining, but you're not doing anything about it. So what do you need? What do you need? What can I help you with? And she paid me a nice sum of money at that time for me as a young adult, a responsible young adult. Um, she paid me a nice sum of money to help her plan her mom's 80th birthday. And it was a travel themed. So of course my creativity and just excitement at somebody paying me money to do something fun, we made passports for people, and when they came in, like if you got a drink you got a passport stamp, and if you brought a gift you got 2 stamps, and we made a whole thing. It was amazing. And then she referred me to another friend, and then that friend referred me to someone else, and then I worked for a gallerist and a movie producer in the Upper East Side. And I was like, wait, people. And then I had to, I think that was my first interaction with other assistants who were not W-2 people. They were people who were 1099 individuals who worked in somebody's house and hung out and got all of the benefits, kind of like The Devil Wears Prada, where you got all of the benefits of working with this huge name in the Upper East Side and getting together for lunches, but you were still going home to like the Bronx, right? You're still this, you get paid and whatever, but you're this broke
Yeah.
person. Then people start throwing around words like, oh, you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur. And I'm like, no, I get this kid's medicine from the pharmacy. What do you mean?
This reminds me, I've had guests on over the years who are professional speakers. And part of their story is the first time they realize they can get paid to speak. That they knew, like the concept was there, in like a Tony Robbins exists kind of way, but no one expects to be Tony Robbins, so that's not a realistic career path. But one day somebody comes to their company and does a presentation, and then they talk to them and find out that that person got paid to do that presentation, and they're like, wait, what? And it's like you meeting these assistants who tell you, this is like a thing. You should treat yourself like a business owner. And you're like,
Right. Or say their name, say who you work for. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, here's extra pastries and take this to X person. I'm like, I didn't pay for this. I got free pastries. What?
Yeah,
and
perks.
I didn't know that. I didn't know people could do that. That was not in the pay a life plan.
So that sounds like a little bit like a personal assistant. You kind of also maybe a little executive assistant, kind of a little bit of everything. Was it whatever people needed?
It was it's exactly what I'm doing today, whatever people needed, because I joke with my clients a lot, but if I can't find the way, there likely is not a way, because I'm a person who will get creative and think out the box and just be like, okay, but did you do this? No, why
Mhm.
not? Like, let's try that. And I can do it for other people. I can't do it for myself. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was a little bit of everything. Researching schools for their kids and enrolling them in basketball things, sending emails, planning dinner parties, planning Oscar viewing parties with catering and whatever. And then they'd be like, oh, take this super fancy caviar home because we're just going to throw it away, even though it cost us $1,000. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Wow.
I lived all my dreams through that job. That was the moment in my life where everything became possible. It like blew everything wide open for me because I didn't understand that people actually live in real life this way, and it wasn't just a like movie thing.
Right. That there are actual people and they don't live that far, even though it seems like forever far away.
Right.
Like they're not actually that far and you can come into their world.
They're a train ride away.
Before the pandemic, before you and I met in 2020, what was the focus of your business those couple years before that? Like you were online, you were doing online business stuff, but what was the focus of it back then?
I was trying to figure out, well, I'll tell it this way. I will give the motivation and then what it was. So my motivation was at 19, many doctors in Boston, New York, and Florida told me I was infertile and would never have children. And then April Fool's Day of 2015, my doctor told me I was pregnant. And I sat there and I was like, got on my soapbox and gave her a lecture about how so many women are struggling with infertility, and joking about people being pregnant on April Fool's Day is dumb and hateful and hurtful. And she was hysterical because she's just like, okay, but still, in 40 weeks, you're going to have a tiny human living in your house that you grew like an easy bake oven. And my motivation then became, I can never work for someone else. I can never go to another meeting or another, like, oh, hey, we need you to work this weekend, or Black Friday's coming and we need you to plan out this merchandising. I couldn't do that. And I was working at Walmart at the time. And I sat with my partner, we talked it out and we decided what we were going to do. And I was like, well, I guess I'll quit my job. I still love to eat. I'm sure this thing that I'm growing loves to eat probably. And we need food. So we're going to have to figure it out. And then it very quickly became a whatever you need operation. Oh,
Mhm.
do you need people to answer your customer service emails? I'm great at customer service. And I would hype my way into getting paid for something. Oh, you don't know how to program your website? I can do it. And then I would YouTube my life away and figure out every single thing that needed to be done. I am, if nothing else, I am scrappy AF all the time. If something
Very
needs to get
resourceful.
done, I'm going to get it done. I guess resourceful is the more professional way to say it. I like my way, but
I like
fine.
your way too. So, in my second book, I have a Venn diagram around ideal client. And the ideal client is somebody who wants the experience you have around a topic that you are passionate about to the point where you would just do it for free. But they understand the value of how you can help them, that they actually want to pay you. Like that's your ideal person. Do you feel like that has shifted and changed a lot as you started to refine your offerings?
Refine. I love that you use that word, knowing the inner workings of how I run my life and my business. It has changed. And also not, it's changed and will probably continue to change if we're being honest here. But I have also become, there's a new clarity with it. And I have realized that the thing that I'm most passionate about that I would do for free is helping other people. So it really depends on what you need. If you have a new book out and you want to promote the heck out of it, I'm going to figure out how to get you everywhere. If you want to be featured on podcasts, then I'm going to do that. My goal is to make sure that whatever you're dreaming about comes to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone had grabbed 8-year-old me and said, hey, every single thing that you're thinking in your head, your dreams of being an artist, of being a writer, of being a speaker, of being a lawyer, all of those things are absolutely possible. You just need to figure out how to do it. If you stay the course and do it, it'll happen, regardless of how wild and in outer space it seems. It's absolutely possible. My life would have been very, very different. But also I don't think I would be where I am right now. I probably wouldn't have a kid. I wouldn't be married to my best friend. I wouldn't know the people that I know right now. So I think my life happened exactly the way it needed to for me to get to this point. And it's, it's always changing and getting more clear.
So you said, broadly speaking, helping people. Do you have a particular kind of people that you like to help?
I was just, one of my clients said to me that someone referred to them as a visionary entrepreneur. And this happened just recently, like 2 weeks ago, maybe. And I've not stopped using that word, because to me, a visionary is somebody who sees these amazing possibilities in life, but doesn't quite, like, those things don't really exist, but could, if 3 of us got together, absolutely could happen. And I think those are the people I gravitate toward. I think you're that person. I look at my clients and they're all are doing something that's a little bit not on anybody's track. Nobody's kid right now is saying, hey, you know what? That's what I want to be when I grow up. But it's because they don't know about it. Not because it's not an amazing and completely valid thing to be.
That's cool. Hey, because you have had a front row seat on the roller coaster of my business, I want to talk about that for a minute, because February 2020, I hired you, and we want to give a shout out to Melissa Smith of Association of Virtual Assistants. And I was a member, and I put out a call for someone to help me with doing some research. And you were one of the people who answered that. And I hired you to do this like $100 a month project. I had a big plan. I had been sort of dragging my heels on doing outbound call. I'm not like an outbound person. I'm like an attraction-based marketing is totally my thing. But like I was in this whole outbound sales process for new talk. I was, poised to be an overnight success, 10 years in the making. My TEDx had just come out. I was going to really like reap the benefits of all of those things. And so I hired you to do this. And like within a month, it's like, that's not actually going to be the thing. But then I asked you probably within like another month, like to take over all my podcast stuff. And so you became my main virtual assistant. But I'd love to just hand the mic to you. What's been your like experience of this ride we've been on over the last 3 years?
It's been fun. Also, I think it's a perfect amount of chaos to tie it back to my leadership. It's the perfect amount, because everything has had a season in your business since we've been working together. And sometimes the slow times, right, where we're just focusing on 2 or 3 things, very quickly, because of who we are as people and the way I am and the way I hype my friends up and the way I hype the people around me up, it very quickly can turn into 12 things. And then all of a sudden we're just like, why did we agree to this? Oh, right, because we're not all the way there in the head. Right. Okay. Well, let's just figure this out. And it's been very fun to navigate all these. You're always saying it's spinning plates and not balls in there. So it's a good teamwork of us just kind of walking around these plates and making sure that everything is going. And sometimes we let things slow down to the point where it's like, hey, that's gonna fall. You might want to. We're like, no, it's fine. We have like 2 weeks before that falls. We're fine. So we've gotten to know each other better. and know our families a little bit better. It's just been it's a nice combination of work and play, I think. And it's
Mhm.
going to continue to get better and grow because I'm going to make you write more books and things that you don't necessarily know that you want to do yet, but I can see.
Yeah, the backstory for folks who are listening is that in February of 2022, I was approached by a traditional publisher to write a book about Zoom, and I explored that with them until May of 2022, when it became very apparent that they wanted me to write a book about Zoom within the context of the workplace. And I have not used Zoom in the context of the workplace. I work with Zoom in the context of professional speakers and facilitators presenting at conferences and such. So I sort of said no to that opportunity. And then a month later, Peya was like, "You have the book written already." And what she's referring to was all the content that I had already created by that point. But of course, she didn't realize there's still lots of work to do in getting the book done. And it ended up being a much bigger book than I originally thought.
I
But it
still remain
you
steadfast that
you
no one could
cooked
have written this
you
book.
cooked the idea for me and put it in my head, and then I couldn't let go of it.
And
So I
when you said no to that person, you said, "No, I don't even have time to write a book." And I was like, "It's already done. What do you
yeah.
mean? I have all of the words. Let's
Yeah, so
go."
you transcribed all of the videos that I had done. I had like 70 plus videos and started making an outline over the summer. And then in the fall is when I started getting serious about writing it. But, what's fascinating is that I thought it was going to be 25, 30,000 words. My first two books were about that, a little over that. And I wrote 25,000 words by the end of the year. And then
Mhm.
I wrote another 35,000 plus words in January. And the
Yep.
book came out in March, like
Yep.
it's so fast. Thanks to,
Mhm.
my editor and my formatters for helping me pull that off. It was quite the feat. But yeah, you really, I
Visionary.
mean, I wasn't going to do it, but I'm glad I did it. And people have, it's been very well received. I will say for everyone who's out there who's a content creator, please give them feedback. Thank them. Be specific in your thanks. It's so nice. We'd work so hard to create content. And I'm so grateful to my launch team because the time that the reviews, as early reviews start coming in, is when the pile of to dos have gotten bigger and bigger. And so being able to hear those early reviews and read them, it's very strengthens the spirit. And Peya, you've been there too, just like helping me kind of stay the course and keep the rest of my business afloat, which is the other piece about why you feel like it doesn't you don't have time to do everything. It's like, well, because you shouldn't do everything. That's why we have a team, and you've been a big part of that. So we're wrapping up here. I'm curious. I always ask about any networking tips. I'm curious, like if there's anything in particular that you do. I always have sort of the inner circle. You'll stay in touch with, but then there's like the outer layers you want to nurture and sustain connections with. Any habits, philosophies, practices?
I am not a peopler, although people is my word of the year for this year. So there've been on your show, there's lots of super extroverty people who have systems and use all these CRMs and spread. You're a big spreadsheet person, which is great. And then there's introverts who come on here and act like they don't have it all together. And on my end, listening to, creating show notes, I'm like, this person knows exactly what they're out there doing. So I'm going to speak to people like me who are not peoplers and have no system and don't know why they can't make the money that they want to make when they're not talking to anybody, because that equation did not math for me either. My system for nurturing and sustaining my network is talking to people who are really good at it. Talking to people like Robbie, talking to people like Blake Fly, who wake up and have this weird desire to just be out there talking to strangers and do it with a smile and do it authentically and have fun doing it. I feel like when I'm dropped in the moment, I am good ish at it. But then I need 17 days to recover from that 2 hour interaction with strangers. So I talk to people, I watch what they're doing, and then I adapt it to my
Mm-hmm.
life. Like Blake is huge on voice notes and
Yep.
doing that, which I do with my friends. So why can't I send someone a voice note? And the times that I have done it, it gets such a reaction because people will say things like, I didn't oh my gosh, that was so insightful, or that was so this or that. And I'm just like, okay, but this is who I am. I just don't tell people. It's all. So if you're
So
living in secret, stop doing that.
yeah, don't be your best kept secret. So two things. One, shout out to Blake Fly, who I interviewed, and then he interviewed me for one of my episodes as well. So we'll put the link in the show notes for those episodes, and as well for Dory Clark. I mentioned her earlier. And the other thing is the voice notes thing. I think most people don't even realize like how to do that, but you can do with your phone, mobile app for LinkedIn or Facebook or texting. You can do a voice note to people. And so just imagine sending a LinkedIn message that's like a 30 to 90 second, voice note with maybe a 5-word, 10-word sentence underneath it to give some reference to like what it is you talked about. Really gets people's attention, adds a little personality, makes you stand out. And you don't even have to be camera ready. You don't have to like have the perfect backdrop, and all that stuff that I think can really throw people off. So Blake has been a real champion of that, and I have been using it more as well. I like that idea, and I love that you're just trying to learn from people who do it well and take what makes sense for you and leave the rest, and incorporate what you can. As we're wrapping up here, my favorite question is always ask people, a year from now, when I sort of remark on the fact that it's been a year, so I actually sat down and interviewed you, Peya. What are we going to be toasting or celebrating a year from now? What are you most looking forward to in the year ahead?
In the next year, I've not said this. I've written this and I've told a few people, but I will have either given a TEDx or at least be scheduled to do one, because that's in the works. And what does a person who's terrified of speaking to people do when, we give TEDx's? So that's what I will be doing.
That's
and
amazing.
That's what we'll be celebrating.
I can't wait to celebrate that with you.
And maybe your 4th book of subject matter TBD.
Gosh, the number of people who have had opinions about what the content of my 4th book will be has been astounding, considering that this one hasn't even officially launched yet as of the time of this recording. And I'm like, I'm like birthing this book. Like, don't talk to me about future children. I'm still
okay, but 2 under 2, Irish twins or whatever.
I did 2 under 2. I already 17 months apart.
3 under 2 then. Is that? I don't know that
3
that's
under 3, I think
possible.
is the math. Hey, this has been amazing. How can people find you and follow your work?
I am nowhere because I don't put myself anywhere. But I guess predominantly on Instagram at Pey Pey the VA. Pey Pey the VA pretty much anywhere, or just email me. There'll be stuff. I'm in the show notes. You know how I know? Because I'll be doing them. Okay.
Thank you so much. We'll put all the links in the show notes at ontheschmooze.com. Peya, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.